Hi, Fred. Thank you very much for being the Uptown Gallery's first painting exhibit artist.
Well, it's a beautiful space. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to show.
Well, it was my pleasure to invite you. It's a real treat to be a curator and a co-curator with Kerryhenderson, who is also as in love with your work as I am. And we were both very excited when we came to your studio and we were selecting the paintings to put on our gallery walls. And it's been a real treat for both of us to watch different reactions of viewers to the work. And every single person enjoys it, loves it, has a response, and sees things that are different. And really, they get engaged and animated, and it's such a beautiful experience to appreciate how people respond to your work.
Well, I'm very happy that that's the case. They do it for me, so I'm glad that they're doing for other people. Exactly.
Fred, it would be very interesting to hear a little more about your background. We've had many conversations about your art training and your history, and I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about the exhibitions that you've had, the art training that you've had, and your philosophy as an artist. You've spoken about it a little bit before, but perhaps you can talk about what you learned as a curator at the Patterson Museum, what you learned also as an art reviewer and doing an independent film, because everything really comes together in an integrated way and it infuses itself into your work and the gestalt. So I'd like to hear a little more about some of the artists that you curated, some of the experience that you had at different points in your life, and some of the artist experiences that you've had with the Lower East Side artists that you showed with. So how that manifests itself into the spirit of your work as well.
Well, I started doing drawing. Let me go back. I was with Chemical Bank in the early 70s. I was working operations, commercial loan, and it was driving me crazy. A friend of mine said, "Listen, you need to relax. Come with me on Thursday nights. We go to this place. We draw the figure." I said, "Listen, I don't draw." He goes, "So what?" He said, "There's this wonderful, crazy teacher. We drink wine. We draw a figure. It's a great thing." So I did. And I went and I started to draw. And the teacher, a guy named Irv Doctor, said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm a banker. I work in operations. I'm looking to do school, and I'm looking to move forward in the banking career." He said, "Well, I want you to go in tomorrow, and I want you to resign, and I want you to go to art school." And I looked at him, and I thought he was crazy. Well, within 6 months, I'd resigned, and I started to take classes at a place called the Ducre School of Art in New Jersey. Very traditional, 10 classes a week, morning and afternoon, once a week, with a lot of work to do in our own studios. Foundational, important. Learned how to draw. I wasn't allowed to draw to a shaded drawing for a year. Learned a lot. It was wonderful. And I started to make painting and drawing, and then I moved out west and went to the University of California. I lived for a couple of years in San Francisco, and I went to the University of California in Santa Cruz, and I got my degree. And that's where things started to move forward. I came back and I moved back to New Jersey, and I started to paint in a little apartment. I was making paintings in a little apartment. And a friend of mine was showing in New York, and he said, "Hey, come to the East Village." He said, "There's plenty of spaces, a lot of shows. It's a community-oriented experience." So I went, and I started showing in restaurants, and I think I showed in an S&M club.
Sneakers and makeup, right?
Yeah, well, right. But it was fascinating. I mean, I met a lot of people. I got involved, with with collaborative projects, which was a major artist organization. They did the Times Square show and the real estate show, which were seminal experiences for the East Village. And I showed places like Fashion Moda in the South Bronx, Black and White and Color in the South Bronx. I showed in a couple of shows in Soho with at Blumhelman when China for Democracy, and I showed in the group show at the Bill Bass Gallery, 560 Broadway. And I just started to make art and showing it wherever I could. And I'd been a poet before I was a painter, and so I had a bit of a facility to write, and I had big opinions about art. And so Jeff Wright, who was the editor-in-chief, he was the chief of everything, I think, for Cover Magazine, asked me to write reviews, and I started to write art reviews for him. And then I was offered an opportunity to curate for the Patterson Museum in Patterson, New Jersey. I lived in a artist housing complex. It was beautiful. Old silk mill that they renovated still exists, and the Patterson Museum, which still has its art program. And I showed a lot of local artists. I showed Sylvie Bowl. Sylvie was Julian Schnabel's studio assistant. She did an incredible show of rondels based on World War II, or actually up to contemporary rondels, markings for airplanes, for military airplanes. We did that in conjunction with a 50th or 60th year anniversary of the end of World War II. And we brought in tanks and all kinds of different hardware. It was a fascinating show. And then one of the people I showed was a fellow named Ho-Young Kim, a fantastic artist, and his uncle, who was a major sculptor in Korea, offered me an exhibition in Korea. They flew me there. I spent 3 weeks. I got to cut the ribbon on at a mall. It was fascinating, but I was really respectful of what the Korean community did to support their artists. Everybody had original art in their shops, barber shops, massive sculptures in the parking lots of car dealerships. It was brilliant. And then my son came along. And 16 months after he came along, I wound up as a single dad. And so I sort of put art on the back burner for 10 years. In the meantime, I started to write screenplays. A friend of mine, Gerald Slota, who's a photographer who shows with Rico Maresca Gallery in Manhattan, came to me one day with Reds magazine and said, "Let's make a movie." I said, "Make a movie? I don't know how to make a movie." He said, "So what? I've been making 8 millimeters for years. I want to make a movie. Write me a script. You're a writer." So I did, and we made 2 independent films. The second one, called 16W, which was screened at the 2004 Woodstock Film Festival, which was a thrill for me. I moved to Woodstock, and I just continued to raise my son until it was time for him to leave. And then I got involved. I wanted to come back to painting, and that's where I am now.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
So what did you learn by being a curator that
artists are incorrigible?
I've learned that too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it became something different. You step outside of yourself as a painter, and when I was doing art criticism, it was the same thing. I was experiencing other people's creativity and facility and vision, and the best part of being a curator was that I was able to choose what I wanted to put on the walls.
Right.
And that was very gratifying and very wonderful, because I was able to take people whose work I respected and give them a place to show, and on a museum level, which was very important to their careers. And it was that kind of experience that didn't necessarily feed my own painting, but it certainly gave me a larger breadth of experience within the art world. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to exhibit here. It's a beautiful space. Your energy is terrific. Kerry's energy is terrific, and I know he has big plans for Kingston. I would love to see the artists come together in a collaborative spirit and put together a stop that people will make on their way or as a final stop in their Catskill experience, and find things that are being made here that have real vitality, real value, for them to bring home. I think it would be wonderful.
Exactly. One of the curating experiences I had with this one gallery was a limousine pulled up, and an individual who's a real estate developer bought so many of the pieces. They may have actually bought all of the pieces, and it was because this was authentic art. It was beautiful, and it wasn't shown. These pieces weren't shown in New York, so it was something that was fresh and alive. And I do believe that this gallery is a special place. It is beautiful. The reception that we had for you had Don Sparks playing beautiful music, and the collaboration between art and dance, poetry, movement of music alongside the art is so beautiful, and it's a very vital experience. So this gallery is really very accessible to people from New York City who come up on weekends, and for the Kingston community as well. So it's my pleasure to have your art here, and I thank you.
Thank you.